Welcome on in, Browns fans, as we get you ready for week 1 of the season. Browns and Bengals ready for a showdown at Huntington Bank Field on Sunday. And it's a game that certainly comes with some high anticipation, considering it's two division rivals. First game of the season, of course. We know Browns fans are going to show up at the Muni lot and party hard before the game. So it should be a fun weekend, no doubt. And we got a lot to break down in terms of this matchup. And in terms of the season at large, we'll give you some bold predictions for the season. We got some other things to talk about. But, Megs, it's crazy to say it, but week 1 is officially here, my friend.
Week 1's here, man. I don't know if the offseason went slow or fast. Like, I think back to, I was thinking back today to when you were at the NFL Combine in February. We were getting ready for the draft in April. Then the OTAs rolled around. Browns have been the talk of the town with Shedeur and Dylan Gabriel and all that stuff, man. And now you get into training camp. It's like, all right, you feel like football's there. You're on campus every day, like looking at it and watching it. And then, you have to work your way through the preseason now finally, dude. Like tonight we got football being played and we got Browns on Sunday.
I think there was moments that were slow and moments that were fast. I think the last month felt very slow. I think training camp felt very slow. I felt like we could this week couldn't get here soon enough. So glad that we're finally going to get a chance to actually talk about some football. There's a number of things we want to hit on. I actually think, though, the natural starting place is with the thing that's been the conversation starter for this team really for a while now, which is the quarterback position. We know Joe Flacco's the starter. There's no more debate over the Shedeur wars and how many snaps he should be getting and whether or not he should be starting and Dylan Gabriel and whatever. So we know who the starter is. But I think what's an interesting conversation off of this, Megs, is like how long Joe Flacco will be the starter on this team. And what I think is important here is like I sort of started out saying I thought that first 6 games, right? That stretch of the game, that first 6 games that are considered the quote-unquote gauntlet for the Browns to start the season, where you play 5 playoff teams from last year, with the Bengals being the only one that you don't play in the 6th team, and they open you. That's your season opener, but still a team that has one of the best quarterbacks in the sport, one of the best offenses in the sport, and so it's certainly a challenging portion of the schedule to open things up. But like I as I thought about it more and more, I honestly think like we've almost undersold how long Flacco is probably going to be out there, because I get it. We want to see these rookies. We want to get them on the field. I think you and I both agree, like seeing those guys in some capacity makes sense for this team that's trying to figure out the quarterback position, because Joe Flacco is not your long-term solution. But knowing where they're at and that they're trying to win now, I don't know that they're going to be so inclined to just pull the plug on Flacco, especially if they get through that first 6 games and they're like 2-4. Well, yeah, that's not a great start of the season, but like depending on what lies ahead and what happens next, where you got like the Dolphins and the Patriots after that, like more winnable games, all of a sudden it's like, well, hey, if he wins those 2, now you're 4-4 going into the bye week. So I don't think Kevin Stefanski would just pull the plug in a situation like that. And so that's what I think is going to be the thing that fans need to sort of be prepared for here, is that Flacco could be out there longer than I think people maybe anticipated initially.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And it is all schedule driven. And obviously that's not breaking news by any means, but you look at this Bengals game and it's Joe Burrow on the other side of things, but in his first 5 seasons, he's 1-9 in his first 2 weeks. Now they have changed their approach. Their whole offense has played a lot more in the preseason. I think the final tally was they got 5 drives throughout the preseason, and they've been more active. Jamar Chase playing for his first time in this preseason. So they're trying to go and win this football game to get their season off on a good start. But like that's one where, regardless of how many times you practice or whatever, they still have a garbage defense. Like that's just the way that it is. Like this isn't the 85 Bears. This isn't the 2023 Browns. Like this defense that the Bengals have, and we'll get into it in a little bit more, but like is not something that you're scared of. And then you go Ravens, Packers, Lions, Vikings, you're probably losing 3 of those games. Likely you're losing 3 of those games, but that leaves you with Steelers, Dolphins, Patriots before the bye. And you're like, hey, you go 2-3 in those final 3, and like you said, you're 4-4 going into the bye week, and there is absolutely no way that, with barring an injury or whatnot, that Joe Flacco, if they're 4-4, there's no way he's not the quarterback coming out of that bye week, because you can't just punt on a situation like that. If things are rolling and this team's got a chance, they have a very favorable schedule coming out of the bye too. And it's like, hey, if we're going to be in the playoff contention, you're going to ride with what got you there. And that would be Joe Flacco in that scenario.
Yeah. And like, frankly, a lot of it revolves around the goal for the season for this team, which is they want to try to win now while developing young guys. And so I'm not going to say it's going to take them being like mathematically eliminated to kick things over to the rookies, but the season has to like really be in the toilet for them to even consider it. I mean, think about last year, right? And I know it's different circumstances because they gave up a lot for Deshaun Watson. So they were already so deep at that point that they had to kind of see it through. But we were 6 weeks into the season last year. And the Browns had one win when Kevin Stefanski stood there in Philadelphia and said to everybody, we still think Deshaun gives us the best chance to win. And everybody thought that was garbage, and it made no sense. But it was the way that they were. I just don't think you're going to get Kevin Stefanski pulling the plug if there's a chance that, Flacco's still keeping the offense afloat and they're still winning football games. Unless they're like winning in spite of him, I think he probably has this job for a little while here. And what's interesting on the other side of that, Megs, is like what that then means for the rookies, because I get it. Like in an ideal world, it goes Flacco. For some people, Shador, then Gabriel, but it's probably more likely going to go Flacco than Gabriel because they prioritize him, then Shador. And I think that they're going to give a longer leash to Gabriel than they'd give even Shador. And so you could even be talking about a situation where like Flacco plays 9 games and then they're like, all right, you know what? Now we're kind of out of it. Now we're going to kick it over to Gabriel for the last like 7, and they give him those 7 games so that they can prioritize like getting a better read on the quarterback that they took earlier, right? The guy that they really loved during the pre-draft process. And if they do that, I don't know what reps are going to really be there for Shador Sanders, unfortunately. Maybe he gets like thrown a bone at the end of the season. He plays 1 game. I don't know, but it's not like you're going to get a good read on that. And I think that would ultimately set the stage for them to then figure out whether or not they're drafting a quarterback again in 2026. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, this quarterback conversation, while it gets put to bed for now because you're starting the season with Flacco, it's going to be a constant thing, constant push and pull throughout the season of figuring out when the right time is to pull the plug. And I don't know that it's going to be as obvious as we're making it out to be, where it's like, well, hey, just give Flacco 6 games and then kick it over to the rookies. Like, it might not be that simple if they're 2-4, 3-3 out of that opening stretch. So we kind of have to just let this thing play out first.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And this is when the decision to take Shador in the 5th round really, kind of that decision's coming to light, because it was awkward. It's been clunky this whole offseason, and like you finally got some, like you got to see both of them, and they both had good plays and good stretches. They both had bad stretches as well, and that you just kind of never saw what the plan was with getting both of them. And now that you're looking at a schedule here where there is a world where they start 0-6 or 0-7, and you're like, all right, the season's into the trash can. Let's figure it out. That's a different story. If they are competitive, which, I mean, truth be told, like not even being, on the Brown side of things, I think this is going to be a competitive team. I've said it a couple times. By no means do I think they're a Super Bowl contender, but they're going to be a hard team to beat. I don't care who you are. They're going to play tough defense. They're going to try to win the line of scrimmage all the time, and they're going to have a couple playmakers on the offensive side of the ball that can go. And Joe Flacco is scared of nothing. He'll throw that thing around the field. He don't care if he throws interceptions. He don't care if it's touchdowns. Like, he's going to rip that thing until there's triple zeros in the 4th quarter on the clock, and they're always going to be in it. So I don't know, man. It's a weird stretch, and barring any injury, the Browns are going to have some weird decisions to make, at the end of the season, because you have to figure out what you have in these 2 kids. Like, you're going to have potentially a top 5 pick next year, and maybe 2 top 10 picks, or maybe 2 top 15 picks in next season's draft. And you got to know what you got at the quarterback position, and if it's potentially a long-term solution.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they have to, but this team never does things conventionally. And frankly, I think they drafted 2 with the idea that, like, well, we don't have 1, so we might as well see what we got. But even in drafting 2, whether they figure out what they have in these guys or not, I think like they still could draft another one next year, and then it kind of becomes a moot point that we even were debating this year anyway. So I don't know. It's a very fluid situation. It's one that is still to be determined for the Browns in terms of what they'll do with that position specifically. It's why I said I wouldn't have minded if they started the season with the rookies starting, because then you'd know you're going to see more of them and you can actually get a better picture of who they are. Yeah. But not the state of things in Cleveland, because the team has enough guys that are in their prime or ready to compete now that they got to sort of thread this needle here, and we'll see how capable they are to pull something like that off. That's I think in some respects like easier said than done, to try to be competitive while also developing young guys. We'll get back to some of these young guys a little bit later, because I have a bold prediction for you that I think Browns fans are really going to love, that centers around, I think, especially these rookie players. But some other areas that we wanted to hit on, and I think that one of those, in talking about the quarterbacks, the weapons that are sort of around this team obviously come into play. And there's a run game conversation here. There's a receiver conversation here. I actually want to play this clip, though. Jerry Jeudy was kind of asked about the fact that this wide receiver room is viewed as, well, it's Jerry Jeudy and then sort of like this collection of just guys that nobody really knows about, that we don't know how good they are, and why he thinks that that's not, that narrative is kind of wrong, and that he believes in the guys around him. Here's what he had to say, and then Megs and I will react on the other side.
The perception is wide receiver room. There's you, and then a lot of unproven guys. You're around these guys every day. What gives you confidence that this receiver room can step up and do it?
Just because I'm around these guys every day, I know what they're capable of. I practice with these guys, so I see what they do out there on the field each and every day. So, a lot of outsiders may not know, but the people inside know who we got, and that's why we got who we got.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd expect a teammate and a guy that's in that room with them every day to speak positively of them. I don't know, like, and we'll talk about the run game here in a second. I know they want the run game to sort of be the bread and butter of the offense, and the pass game be an extension of that. But it still is the NFL in 2025. You still have to be able to throw the football. What I'm interested in is like Flacco starting the season. And so naturally, I think Flacco makes the guys around him better. He doesn't need like the premier weapons to have success. So I think he can bring out the best of like Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash. But I think ultimately it just comes down to those guys have to have a lot to prove. Cedric Tillman, I think, started to turn a corner last year, but was it a fluke? Can he stay healthy? Those are questions he has to answer. Jamari Thrash had a great camp, but is, how prominent is he going to be in this offense? I have my doubts about all those things. But you hope that Joe Flacco can maybe pull something out of those guys. But I don't know, like if I'm talking about the weaknesses on this team, I think wide receiver is the biggest one I circle at this juncture for this team, because it's just all due respect to Jerry Jeudy, I know I appreciate what he's saying there, but I do think the narratives about it being Jerry Jeudy and a bunch of unproven guys are fair, because that's just it's the truth. It's how that room is set up right now. It's a lot of guys who have something to prove. What I do think is nice though, Megs, is like last week we talked to Cedric Tillman, and he even said, he was asked about like not the Browns not signing another number 2 wide receiver and sort of leaning on the idea that he can be that guy. And he said he appreciated that, but even he said, I got to prove it to them, and I got to live up to that expectation now. And so I think it's good that they know that they have to show that they have to take that step this year, both him and Jamari Thrash.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I look back to the 2023 team where Flacco came in and obviously went on that massive run. They didn't have – it wasn't a murderer's row of receivers then, right? Amari Cooper kind of led the way. He had 1,200 yards. That was his crazy season. He had that big record-setting game against the Texans, and I think it was Flacco's last win. No, that would have been the Jets game. But anyway, he had that big one. And then after that, it's David Njoku, and then your next wide receiver is Elijah Moore, right? And then your 4th highest receiver after that is Jerome Ford, and then Cedric Tillman, and then David Bell, and then Jordan Akins, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like that's not the Texans wide receiver core. That's not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver core where you got stars everywhere. And that group made the playoffs, so it's like, hey, what I would hang my hat on and what I'm kind of as, from a Brown fan perspective is I do think, and we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, but I do think that Kevin Stefanski is a very good coach, and I think he's a very good play caller. And the fact that the offense is back in his control, I think, is beneficial for a situation where you do have a receiver room that is unproven and that has a lot of question marks in it. You have a guy in Jeudy and then a bunch of question marks. I think they're going to have to be creative to figure it all out. But, I do think that it's not a death wish or a death sentence that wide receiver room isn't the best that they've had. It's not the best in the NFL.
I like that you said be creative, because I think what's unique about the way Stefanski does things is we know he likes to run a lot of 12 personnel. And so I think that's where my head goes when I talk about this receiver room, is the idea that, those guys might be able to prove something this year. But I actually have more confidence, I think, in David Njoku to contribute to this team in a meaningful way, and even Harold Fannin Jr. as that second tight end, who I kind of feel like is going to be their pseudo slot wide receiver. I think he's going to be running out of the slot a lot more than even some of these receivers will. I think you're going to see a lot less 3 wide receiver sets and more 2 tight end sets, because 12 personnel is so important in Kevin Stefanski's offense. And so because of that, I almost feel like those 2 guys have a chance to make an even bigger impact than even somebody like Cedric Tillman could or Tamari Thrash could. And I think that's how they'll mask that deficiency a little bit, is by utilizing him, Harold Fannin specifically, in sort of that slot receiver role in a lot of sets when David Njoku's also out there with him, and they're sort of out there together in tandem. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. And I think we'll get a sense of that on Sunday, because Harold was really involved in what they were doing offensively throughout training camp.
Yeah, it's the perfect point. And I do think with Harold too, it's you can keep that 12 personnel in the game, and defenses will have to match to it, right? So that forces the defense to go more to their base look, where they got maybe 3 linebackers or less speed. Let's just call it less speed on the field now that, defenses are so creative in what they can do, but they have to go with less speed. And now that like you said, you can split Fannin out, he can be in the slot, he can be a number 1 receiver. That changes a lot of things. You can get to different stuff in one personnel package, which is just a massive chess piece that Cleveland has. They've been calling him the queen chess piece, the queen of the chessboard, because he can do all the things. I think he is going to be that potential to be the X factor that's on the offense.
I might have a bold prediction about Harold Fannin coming up. But speaking of one question on the offense to another, the running back room still very much, I don't know what the right word is, in flux. Surrounded in controversy, clouded in controversy, whatever you want to say, because we know Quinshon Judkins is still not in that building. Even if he shows up today, tomorrow, whatever, he's unlikely to be massively involved in a major way in the offense week 1, probably even so week 2. It would take some time for him to just kind of get caught up on everything and really get acclimated. So, also, by the way, we didn't even talk about Isaiah Bond. I don't know. We don't have to hit on it too long, but I'm curious to see what his role is. I envision an end around within the first 10 plays designed for Isaiah Bond. There's a whole list of guys that I saw that had they're the same stature as Isaiah Bond and ran the same 40 time, and 2 of them are stars that you knew, like Deshaun Jackson and Tyler Lockett, and all the other guys are just okay players or fine players, and then just garbage.
I know exactly what you're looking at. I know
I'm just saying, I don't know that I think Isaiah Bond is going to come in and make a massive impact immediately. But we'll see. I get why they took the shot in the dark on it, and they were like, "Yeah, let's bring this guy in, see what he does." But beyond that, getting back to the running backs here, we know that there's a lot of questions that surround this room. This room, I'm curious, Megs, how worried or not worried you maybe are about the run game, because that's going to be so important to setting up so much for the rest of the offense. And without Quinshon Judkins, who they were envisioning as their workhorse back when they drafted him in April, can it be the strength of this offense despite not having a guy like that sort of headlining it?
No, I don't think it can be the strength of the offense. Which is bad, because I go tongue in cheek here, because 5 minutes ago I just said Kevin Stefanski's real. I think he's a really good play caller. His whole offense is based on the run, and that's the part that's really concerning, because now it's Jerome Ford back as the bell cow, and Ford's so interesting to me because it does feel like feast or famine with him, either home run or strikeout, because, it does feel like he's either going to take it for 70, which he's done a couple times. I remember the first game that we had the site here was against the Colts 2 years ago, and he opened the game off with a 75-yard touchdown run or whatever. And he felt like every other week he has one of those. But also too, when he gets stuffed in the backfield, he's not very elusive in terms of making guys miss. He's got great straight line speed. I don't know. He doesn't inspire a bunch of confidence. Dylan Sampson, I'm interested in. I saw some good things from him in the preseason, but he does feel like he takes a lot of hits. Like, I don't know if it's me or just what I saw, but the hits that he takes are fairly large. So I don't know. I'm not confident about the room at all, to be honest with you. And that's a big level of concern when I look at this roster.
Yeah, I get it. I think there is reason to be concerned. Jerome Ford, I think, has shown some promise over the years, especially sort of filling in, if you will, for, Nick Chubb. But I don't know, like, there's a reason why the Browns drafted 2 this year, right? They were trying to remake that room, understanding that Jerome Ford wasn't like the guy. I think he can be a guy for a period of time. I wonder if, like, having him and Dylan Sampson doing different things and being in on different downs maybe helps that situation. The reason I still feel like they can have an effective run game, and maybe it's not a great run game, maybe it's not the strength of the offense, like you said, but the reason I think they can still be an effective run game is because I do have confidence that this offensive line, getting back to what they did best early on in Kevin Stefanski's tenure, will create some opportunities for even Jerome Ford, even Dylan Sampson. I mean, shoot, maybe even Raheem Sanders if he gets in the game, who I actually think Raheem Sanders, by the way, he looks like what a running back is supposed to look like.
Dude,
200 plus pounds, looks like he'll just run your ass over. And that's what you see from him on tape. And it's crazy because, like, he ran actually, I think, like a hundredth of a second faster than Quinshon Judkins in his 40 time, but he's like built like a freaking bus. Like, it's insane.
I had to remind myself, because you were at practice last week when he first showed up. Like,
yeah,
the clips were like, dude, like, holy cow. I had to remind myself that we just signed it. We claimed him off way, or however we got him. Like, he got cut from his first team. So obviously that means something. But I was like, oh my gosh. And he ran a 4.4, whatever it was, at the size that he is. I was like, holy cow.
I think it was a 4.46, and Quinshon ran like a 4.48, I think it was.
Crazy,
so,
dude.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, so we'll see. But I think the offensive line is the thing that gives me some confidence that they can still be effective in the run game. And I also, like, and especially this week, Megs, and we'll talk about this here a little bit more in a second, but, like, the Bengals defense is not a unit that inspires much. Like I'm not fearful of this Bengals defense. I mean, and they're getting gassed in the preseason. I know it's the preseason. You're not showing a lot, obviously, but it's I'm not sitting here like, man, this Browns team, they're really going to struggle to run the ball on this team. I'm kind of like, maybe it doesn't matter that Quinshon's not here this week, because I still think they'll have some room to run just because the offensive line's doing what they do best. They're getting coached the way they need to be coached. They're getting back to tendencies and schematically things that they're familiar with and enjoy. And so because of that, like, if they can open up the holes and create some lanes, I think Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson, for at least this week, can sort of manage. So I agree with you. It's probably not the strength of the offense, at least starting out, but I think there's reasons to believe they can have some success in a game like Sunday against this Bengals defense that I'm not really fearful of.
Yeah, and one of the things that stood out to me from this week was there was a clip going around of Joel Bitonio. I think he was on one of the Cleveland shows. I forget exactly which one it was, but he was just saying that, hey, one of the big reasons I came back was because we were getting back to Kevin's offense. And that's exciting when your guard, your leader of your team, is like, yeah, baby, let's run the rock and let's do the things that we were good at. Same with Wyatt Teller. Ethan Posick sounds like he's back to practice and he's trying to get ready for the game. It sounded like he practiced today. And then your 2 tackles, Conklin and DeJuan Jones, like, those 2 dudes stay healthy. Like, especially that right side of the line, man. Those are 2 bulldozers that you've run behind for years.
Yeah, big game for DeJuan, by the way. Big test with Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, he'll have to block him quite a bit. But no, you're right. It's funny. Kevin Stefanski sort of pushed back on the idea that it was going back to his offense that kept Joe Bitonio around. He said it was because they got a golf simulator now. But I think Joel certainly was inspired by the idea that like they're getting back to the basics here. Mike Bloomgren being more of a Bill Callahan style coach, I think helped matters as well. And yeah, so I'm optimistic about this offensive line. I don't know that they're going to ever be what they were in the early days of Stefanski, where like Nick Chubb was, even when they made mistakes, could mask them, and they were just one of the best run games in football. I don't know if they'll ever be back to that status as like one of the best offensive lines in football, but I think they're going to be like good enough. Like even if they're fringe like top 10 or like just outside the top 10, like that's good enough for me, especially early on here to like have some success until maybe Quinshon's in that building and can actually contribute in a meaningful way. So we'll see. But along those lines, we talked about the Bengals defense and some of the problems that they had last year as a passing defense. They gave up 30 touchdowns through the air, which is like fourth worst in the NFL. They were very susceptible through the air. And then the preseason, they did not look good, even stop at the run. There's a lot of issues in holes, I still think, on that defensive side of the ball. I know they bring back Trey Hendrickson. He doesn't fix all those things, though.
Right.
And they were bad last year. But as you know, I've talked about this ad nauseum a lot this week, just how bad that unit is. Why I think it's an opportunity for the Browns to actually win this game, because I think the Browns offense can have some success against this defense. But are we like almost overlooking or like too overhyped about the possibilities that exist here because it's the Bengals and the Browns have had their number over the years and they start slow and it's week one? Like, are we almost leaning into those things too much and maybe overhyping how we think the Browns are going to play on Sunday to this juncture? Or I guess where's your head at with in terms of this matchup and how the two teams stack up, and if the Bengals are just too superior, even with the offensive talent that they have, for the Browns to really even have much of a chance in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine, like when I'm thinking about this Bengals team, I can't imagine their offseason, right, where you're like, hey, we have Joe Burrow, who has come out and said, as long as you got me, your Super Bowl window's open. And they were like, screw the defense, man. We're going to re-sign T. Higgins. We're going to give – obviously Trey Hendrickson is a big portion of it, but, let's tell the truth about it. We've lived it when you have not the best – surrounding cast. Like Myles Garrett doesn't mask all the problems. Like you're gonna tell Browns fans that Trey Hendrickson is gonna solve things, and we're just gonna laugh in your face because we've watched a generational talent on the defensive side of the ball get a bunch of sacks and lose a game, by 3 scores, right? So it just doesn't comprehend in my brain how they went the whole offseason and didn't address anything on the defensive side of the ball. Frankly, lost a couple key pieces on that side. And, I'm trying to not get excited about it because you are playing Joe Burrow in a really strong offense, but there's a world where, this final score is 34-27, 34-21, maybe even touch 40. And you just kind of get into this back and forth battle because guess what? If it's Joe versus Joe, first of all, that's must see TV. And secondly, Joe Flacco is not going to stop. You don't care if he's 10 points down or 1 point or up 7. He is going to be ripping the ball all over the field. And if he's got time in the pocket and he's not getting much pressure and they can't, more importantly, aren't covering anything up down the field, look out, man. This Browns offense is going to score a lot of points on Sunday.
See, what I think is to what you're laying out, I think is how the Browns lose on Sunday. If it becomes a shootout, I think it favors the Bengals. Like if they're able to just move up and down the field on the Browns defense, there's some problems there. If they're just going scorched earth, you don't want to get into a shootout with Joe Burrow, especially with a 40-year-old Joe Flacco who is susceptible to turnovers at times.
Yeah, true.
I'm not saying he's not better at protecting the football than even Jameis Winston or whoever else, but you can't get a situation here where I don't think you want Joe Flacco throwing the ball 50 times, essentially. You need to have some balance to your offense. You want to kind of keep the ball away from Joe Burrow and milk the clock a little bit in that way. So I think a more lower scoring game favors the Browns in general. And we'll give score predictions leading up to the game. We don't have to do that right now. But yeah, I think if it plays out that way, the Bengals probably do win because there's a reason they paid Jamar Chase. There's a reason they paid T. Higgins. But I think their defense is very susceptible. I wonder about the Browns defense Myles Garrett's kind of been a kryptonite to Joe Burrow over the years. I think this defensive line this year is the best iteration of a defensive line since Kevin Stefanski's been here that they've put together. I just mean from like top to bottom. I understand like maybe it doesn't have the star power of other groups. Like when Jadeveon Clowney was here, that was a star that people knew. But even like Zadarius Smith the last couple of years, like that was a star that people knew, or a more notable player that people knew. But I think like you look across this line, it's like Myles, Malik Collins, who's one of the better interior rushers in the NFL, Mason Graham, who's supposed to sort of provide that as well as the number 5 overall pick. And then you have the nice rotation of Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire, who I think are ready to take on more that opposite defensive end spot. And then it's the depth behind him. I mean, Mike Hall basically is a backup at this point. And he showed some nice things last year when he was out there on the field healthy. You have a guy in Joe Tryon-Shoyinka who I think is more naturally going to be better as like a defensive end rather than like a linebacker role that he was doing in Tampa. So I just think that like depth-wise and everything, Jim Schwartz has a lot at his disposal with that defensive line. I think they could cause some problems for Joe Burrow. And if they do that, it takes some pressure off the secondary, which I think is a weakness for this Browns team right now because they don't have a lot of depth there. And I think if they limit the scoring that way with the defensive line kind of dominating, it creates this perfect storm for the Browns to win. So I don't know that we're like overlooking the Bengals. Listen, the Browns are projected to win like 5 games this year. So I don't think the Browns or anybody who covers this team or is around this team like we are can overlook any team and just act like it's not. It's it's going to be they can show up and throw the balls out and they're going to win. But I do think like especially in this opening stretch, like this is the game that feels like it's the most winnable because the Bengals have some serious flaws on defense. It's not that I'm overlooking them. I just think they really do. I think it's obvious and clear. And even people who cover that team have talked about it. That they have some issues on that side of the ball. And we also know like history shows the Bengals start slow and that the Browns, especially Myles Garrett, have had some success against Joe Burrow and been able to limit him. Like he's great, but we've also seen him at his worst when he's played this Browns team. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it all plays out. It's great that they have all those weapons, but I think if the Browns can limit the scoring and keep this more of a low-scoring affair, there absolutely is a world where they come out victorious. Because like you said, I trust Joe Flacco to at least lead a competent offense.
Yeah, and Germ, this exact scenario played out in 2023. This isn't going to be, hey, I'm reliving 2023 for the rest of the year just because of that, the way it ended. But like, obviously, this game had horrible weather, but if I read you this stat line and I say 14 to 31 for 82 yards and gave you an option to pick, that was either Deshaun Watson or Joe Burrow, right? Everybody in the world would say that was a Deshaun Watson stat line, but that's what they held Joe Burrow to. Less than 50% of his completions, less than 100 yards. Yes, the weather was crappy, but less than 100 yards passing. Jamar Chase had 5 catches for 39 yards. Like, yes, that was 2 years ago. Totally different scenarios, but it is true. Joe hasn't had the most success in Cleveland Browns Stadium. He's starting to get it a little bit, but I also want to add that they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves to win this football game. Like they start their season with the Browns and the Jaguars, week 1, week 2, and they're saying, "Hey, we got to be 2-0," and to be 2-0 coming out of that, they have to win this game. That's why they've been practicing all preseason, and so there's a lot of pressure on them, internally to go out and win this football game. That doesn't help things. And I think this game is going to be way, way, way more entertaining than maybe if you hear somebody in the national cycle talking about the Browns.
I actually think too, they put almost more pressure on themselves because they've been getting asked about the starting slow thing. And like guys have been getting mad about it. Like they've been responding to the media in like a negative way because they don't want to have those questions anymore. But it's just a matter of like who they've been over the years. And I also think what's also interesting is like both these coaches, by the way, Zach Taylor and Kevin Stefanski, they both took different approaches to training camp in the preseason this year. Kevin Stefanski ran a much more physical camp. They were tackling more. He didn't like put guys in bubble wrap this year. Zach Taylor actually played his starters in the preseason this year, including Joe Burrow. So it's kind of like this whose new approach to the way you get ready for a season maybe wins out. So I'm interested to see what that kind of looks like with the two teams as well, like who's more prepared from the way they went about doing things in training camp. So Megs, we'll wrap up with some bold predictions that we have for the Browns this season. I trust you to be the person who like goes completely off the rails and says like the Browns make it to the AFC Championship game, but I don't know if you're really if you're ready to go that bold. But I have some individual things that I think are kind of fun, but also I'll let you go first.
Okay, I'm up first. I'm not predicting an AFC Championship game. I am going to predict the Super Bowl for the Browns. I'm just kidding. But as you hang out with us throughout the year, I'm going to try to be much better about our game day predictions. I get a little.
You talk yourself into it every week.
Every week, man.
It's funny because I talked to you on Thursday and you're like, yeah, I don't know yet. Like I'm just throwing a team out like, the Dolphins, they got a pretty good offense. Then you get to game day and you're like, I don't even care. The Browns are going to win by 30. It's just so funny.
Browns 31, Dolphins 7. No, here's a couple that I've got. We've hinted at it a couple times in a handful of our shows, but this Browns over win total is, I think last I saw it was 4.5. So wherever you like to look, I think that this team is staring at 7 wins-ish. The back half of the schedule
I think that's pretty bold.
The back half of this schedule is not bad. It is not challenging. I said that all wrong, but there's winnable games on the back end of this schedule. And I think that if they, as we talked at the start, if you can get to 2 or 3 wins before the bye, like, you're going to be in a conversation where you could rip off a couple, and we'll know about this team by then. I do think that this Browns team is going to be far more competitive than people are giving them credit for. They're going to be a tough team to beat on a weekly basis, and I got them getting to about that 7 to 8 win mark, and being in the conversation, well into November, and maybe even a little bit in December.
So what you're saying is around Thanksgiving time, we'll see the Browns popping up in the hunt graphic. That's what you're saying.
Oh, we're in the hunt, dude. We are.
In the hunt.
We're in the hunt. That
Browns
helmet.
That's
we're all going to be Germ. We're going to be eating turkey. You're going to be watching the Cowboys and the Lions and stuffing your face with mashed potatoes and that Browns helmet. Steve Karnacki is going to be talking about the Browns' chances.
They're in the hunt, and they got the Bears coming up. That game's in like mid-December. I'm wrong, but anyway. So one of my bold predictions, and this goes back to something we talked about earlier. I think Harold Fannin Jr. is going to be the second leading receiver on this team. I think it's going to be Jerry Jeudy, and I think it's going to be Harold Fannin Jr. I think he'll poach some of the stats from David Njoku. I actually think David Njoku could maybe have more touchdowns than Harold Fannin because I think he's going to be like a really big focus in the red zone especially. But I think Harold Fannin's going to finish with like more catches and receiving yards than anybody else on this team. And that goes for Cedric Tillman. That goes for Jamari Thrash. I think it's Jerry Jeudy. I think it's Harold Fannin Jr. will be second on that list.
Do you want to double down on this? Do you want to go more? Do you want to go even bolder of a prediction? Are we talking offensive player of the or rookie of the year? Are we in that
offensive rookie? I don't know. I'm not going that far with it, but I think there's too many good. Yeah. I'm trying to think. There could be like if Cam Ward has a really good year for the Titans, like it's going to be like his award to lose. Somebody like Travis Hunter, as if he's depending on what he does as a receiver.
One in the running back.
Ted McMillan, there's too many other guys that I think are going to be more prominent in their team's offenses that I don't know I can go that far with it. But I like where your head's at with it. I mean, it's bold prediction. So if you want to be bold and say he wins,
can I be bold? Can I drop another bold one? It's not
sure.
On the offense. It's Carson Schwarzenegger. The reason why offensive rookie of the year was in my mind is because I do think.
Well, we agree on this one. I have this exact same one.
I do think Schwarzenegger late in the year is going to be in conversation for like this guy's a freak, and he is definitely in the conversation for defensive rookie of the year. And maybe like, hey, he could be a guy that you build a defense around.
Yeah, I like that one. I actually said I thought he would win it, which is a rare thing. Like the last time a raw linebacker won defensive rookie of the year was 2012 with Luke Kuechly. So it's hard to do, especially on a team that might not win a lot of games. Like, will he catch enough eyes that people vote for him? I don't know, but I think he'll do enough like as a guy in coverage that people will notice him, and they'll have to at least keep him in that conversation. So I went bold enough to say he would win it. But
sure, he compared himself to Luke Kuechly. Like that's a perfect.
That's true. That's true.
Guy play like, and we've seen it now. Like he does kind of play. Obviously Luke Kuechly's a Hall of Famer, but he flies around, man, and he's going to be good. I'm excited to watch him. Yeah,
I like that. I like that a lot. Any other bold predictions before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say 17-0, but I didn't have the heart. I didn't have the heart to do it.
Oh man.
We got to get the heck out of here, dude. It's football season. Who wins tonight? Hey, who wins tonight? We got, or I should say better, do the Eagles cover? They're 7.5 point favorites. That's a lot of points.
I don't know, man. I think the Cowboys offense is going to be pretty good, but they're kind of like the Bengals where I'm like, I don't know if I trust their defense anymore now that they don't have Michael
Could
Parsons.
vibes be worse in Dallas?
Probably not. I don't know. They'll probably keep it interesting. That division's always tough. I'll say the Eagles win, but the Cowboys cover.
Do you have any bold takes just in the NFL at large outside of Browns territory? We didn't even talk about this, so I'm throwing you right on the spot.
Yeah, I don't know that I've put my mind to that yet.
I can't wait for football. It's crazy. This is so good.
Bills win the Super Bowl, I guess.
Whoa. Okay. All right.
I think it's the Bills or the Ravens in the AFC. But
does Jaden Daniels have a sophomore slump?
I say no. I mean, I think he might take a step back a little bit, but I think he's still going to be good enough that like the Commanders still make the playoffs and all that. I've seen people who are trying to predict the demise of the Chiefs, which I said was a bad idea. I saw people who were like, Broncos win the division, and I was like, I get what you're doing, but we used to do this with Tom Brady too. We always want to be the first to the take that Tom Brady was finally on the decline, and then he still went out and won all these Super Bowls.
Mahomes isn't even 30 yet.
That's what I'm saying.
We have so much time.
I don't know that we can like make those claims.
I'm
not betting against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into it. Yeah, don't bet against the Chiefs. Just don't do it. They're going to be around.
Does a non-quarterback finally win MVP this year?
No shot. If
Saquon couldn't win it last year, I think there's no way.
There's no way,
because
dude.
Saquon was brilliant last year. If he had broken the record, do you think he wins it?
No.
If he breaks Eric Dickerson's record, because he sat that last game, he was like 100 yards shy, and he sat.
And it was against the Giants too, man. How sweet would that have been? No, I mean, in your scenario, right? If the Bills are in contention, it's going to be Josh again. Like it's literally these quarterbacks are so damn good that like whoever's in contention is having a great year. Like if it's the Ravens, guess what? Lamar's popping off, and Lamar's going to get it again. Like maybe they feel bad that the conversation around Patrick's getting weird, so they're just going to throw him another MVP. Like these quarterbacks are too damn good for them to not win it. I guess I don't know.
We should talk some more about teams that we're like hot and cold on. Maybe leading up to Sunday. We'll do something we'll probably try to do something, I don't know, maybe for Saturday or something in the show. So we'll get into all that. But here's another bowl one for you. Bengals finished last place in the division.
Yeah, baby.
Setting the tone for Sunday. The smack talk continues. I just don't like the Bengals defense. They're terrible. Anyway, guys, we appreciate you stopping by. As always,
trash.
If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so that you can get more content like this. We're in the thick of the season, so there's going to be a lot more stuff to talk about, a lot more stuff to cover, and we'll have you covered both leading up to and, of course, this weekend on game day and so on and so forth. So stay locked in with us. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. Keep on following along with